Welcome to the Real Estate Investing School podcast. I'm your host, Joe Jensen. Our guest today is Michael Mutz. Now, Michael is a real estate investor based out of Lakeland, Florida, with a focus on the Denver and Tampa, Florida markets. Prior to launching his real estate business in June of 2020, Michael was a pastor. He decided to pursue his passion for real estate investing by flipping houses and holding rentals. He's bought over 50 houses in that time and has raised almost $5 million in private financing. He loves building systems to give business the ability to scale and to grow, which I'm excited to talk about that. And in his free time, Michael and his wife offer marital coaching to couples who are looking to strengthen their relationships. Volunteers at his church, mostly enjoys spending his time with his wife, his two kids, traveling, exploring the great outdoors. Welcome to the show, Michael.
Hey, it's great to be here, Joe.
That's awesome. Well, yeah, you've done some cool stuff. I like that, you started your business at the verge of a pandemic, and it's like in, June of 2020 is when you started. Were you into real estate before that and done some other deals? And that's just when you decided to go hard, or how'd you get started?
It was a strange time to start. So I told the pastor I was working with in March, the same week that we decided to shut down the church, that I was going to go do a real estate thing. And at that time, if you remember, it was like, oh, we're going to be shut down for 2 weeks and then everything will open back up. So I was like, okay. Right. And then we were 3 weeks out from having a baby. So from having our first kid. So maybe bad timing. And then my wife got laid off like a week before we had a baby. So it was a crazy time. I'm really grateful for starting it then, because the market's been crazy in good ways and bad ways over the last 3 years. I feel like it was a good mix of time to learn a lot of lessons.
No, hindsight, it's that was a time to go hard,
Yeah. So good in some ways. And then prior to that, I actually just got a signed copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad to give to my brother, because I was out visiting his house in Colorado when I was in college. And he gave me a copy of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I was like, hey, read this on your way home. And then after I read it, I was like, oh, this is a good idea. And I picked a less expensive house to live in, and then started buying some rental properties with my wife when we got married in 2012. So I would say probably kind of got started in real estate because of reading Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and buying some properties. And I did ministry stuff, and then basically got to a point where I was like, all right, I'm ready to go run my own business.
So what year did you buy your very first investment property?
The first one would have been 2014, probably. We just put down 20%, bought a rental, and then bought another one a few years after that. And then in 2018 or 2019, I guess, I knew that I wanted to go start my own thing. So we sold. Oh, and then we moved into another house and rented our first house. So cool. I sold 3 rentals in late 2019 to kind of gear up to have some money. And then just bought a flip off of auction.com.
Nice.
In maybe December 2019. Actually, I bought this flip on auction.com while I was in Honduras, driving back to the airport. I was bidding on this house that I'd never walked through, trying to get back to the airport.
Auctions don't care where you're at and what's going on. Huh? It's this is the auction date. You got to do it when you got to do it.
Yeah, I forgot about that. That's guy riding funny. The car with me is this is so wild that you're betting on a house while we're driving to the airport in the middle of nowhere.
I love that. I remember signing for a house at the airport. I was buying it cash, and so it was so easy. I didn't realize I didn't need to do any notary. We didn't have to meet with anybody. It was literally, they send me a DocuSign. I'm at the airport. I DocuSign, call in, verify some funds with the bank, and send it over. Yeah. And I'm like, that's it. I was like, I just bought a house at the airport. That's crazy.
Yeah, the first time I bought a house in all cash with private funds, I was like, I don't have to do anything, just DocuSign.
It's so easy. Yeah, just click the email. You're like, that was easier than signing up for a gym membership. Wow.
Way easier.
You know what's crazy? And this has nothing to do with the stuff, but it's how difficult transferring ownership of mobile homes is. Like,
Oh,
it's such, I don't know if you've done that or dealt with that before.
yeah, I've had some
And
hard times.
it's such a pain. Like, it's so much easier to buy a $1 million home or buy a car or anything else. But mobile homes have all these weird things. You got to send out, like, it's crazy. It's like, and
Yeah,
every state's totally different.
yeah. For Florida, so I've learned, um, and you basically can like buy the land that has a mobile home on it, or if it's a retired mobile home, I don't know if it's the same there. You can retire the mobile home to the land, and
Yeah,
then
like
it's just like a
detitle
normal
it.
real estate. Yeah, and then it's a normal real estate transaction. So I had bought
Hmm.
some land with a mobile home on it, and I didn't know anything about retiring it, and the title agent didn't catch it either, so it was not retired. But it had been quitclaim deeded 2 or 3 times to the current owner, and so the actual mobile home was in the name of somebody like 3 owners ago, and
Right.
it took a long time to track down whoever that person was to get them to like sign off on selling
Yeah, I have one
on the
like
mobile.
that too. Like the person I bought the property from, they thought they owned the mobile home, but they never officially transferred title. And either
Yeah,
did the person they bought it from. So yeah, it goes like 3 generations back, and like the person that owns it has no clue they even own it right now.
right,
Like
yeah.
they're like, we sold that 20 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so those are like good things with systems to write down and be like, all right, if it's a mobile home, like check to see if it's retired or ask the title agent to retire it if it's not.
Yeah.
I did not. I didn't do that actually on 2 different occasions. So
Yeah.
that's why I like systems.
Yeah, I want to dive into the system. So you decided to do a business. What kind of real estate business was it? The flipping business? Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, so I started basically when I started. It was like I want to buy houses and flip them to generate income for my family and then generate money to keep rental properties.
Hmm.
It was a crazy time and it was good money on flip. So I just kept flipping stuff and did not work on holding rental properties.
Sure.
Um, I held one kind of on accident. I bought it from somebody who hadn't been to it in like 15 years and they had a renter in it. And they wanted me to like buy it without going to look at it. So I gave them an offer, but I was like, I am going to go look at it. I'm going to change my offer, if it's not as you've described it, which I
Yep.
try not to do. I try to be really, really um, consistent in being like, hey, I'm going to come out, I'm going to look, I'm going to make you an offer while I'm there in the 1 hour we're going to spend together. And then if I find some other thing during it, I won't change my offer. Like what you
Yeah.
get is what you get. In this instance, she didn't want to do that. So I went out and basically when I went there, the renter was a hoarder. It was a pretty bad property. I got her to
Hmm.
negotiate it down, but he was like, please don't make me move. I just want to live here until I die. And I was like, I could only do that if you pay like double your rent. And he was like, done. And I was like, oh, okay.
All
So
right.
so that was the first rental I started when I started doing it full time, and he actually just moved into hospice. So
Mm.
I am now going to flip it, and thanks to the market, I bought that in like January 21. It's worth a lot more money now.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of debating if I should keep it or not. But basically, besides that, I forgot about keeping rentals and was just flipping stuff. In 2022, I got caught on a few houses and lost some money and was
Yeah.
like, oh,
Like
oh
like
yeah,
everybody, like everybody else. Those
yeah, like
flipping
yeah.
deals.
And so now I'm like really being disciplined to be like, I'm going to go find rentals because it's too stressful with like the market fluctuating. Rentals are good. They're just a good way to have some reliance on income and not feel too stressed.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the long hold. Like I'm trying to decide if I should keep it. My mind screaming, just keep it, just keep it, keep
Yeah.
everything. Don't sell anything. But no, that's cool, man. That's so you're kind of pivoting more towards that now. You're wanting to build kind of the long hold portfolio, um, as
Yeah.
opposed to
Yeah. So
just focusing on flips.
I've still got to flip because I need to make money for my family and I got
Sure.
to generate money to hold stuff if you can't perfectly burr it out. But apart
Right.
from that, like it's my goal to work to keep between like 5 and 10 rentals a year is
That'd
my
be
new
cool.
goal.
Well, that's what's so cool about the people like you who are actually like taking the time and creating the systems and the business to do a flipping business is like say the ones that can work, you can just hold and you get first pick, right? You've got, these leads, you've got these houses coming in and you've bought, all sorts of crazy houses. We're going to get into some of those stories. But you're buying all these houses and you can just, the ones that work as a hold, you keep, the ones that don't, you flip, and that generates your capital. It's like, it's such a perfect marriage of, active income and building passive income, as opposed to, making money outside the industry. Then how are you going to go find your deals? You're making your money in the industry so you can find the deals. So it's like, I love that.
Yeah. You should absolutely be able to keep more houses with less money if you're flipping houses, because hypothetically you should be getting them way under market. So,
Yeah, and then you're so in tune with the market because you're doing it every day, which is super cool. I think that's an awesome way to do it. So how do you find houses? I mean, so you get all sorts of interesting stories. I want to get into some of these. You talked about the murder houses is what I called them, but how are you finding these crazy homes, and how are you finding leads to buy?
Yeah, so I own a We Buy Ugly Houses franchise, one in Denver and one in Florida, which is called Homevestors is the name of the company, but people know them better by We Buy Ugly Houses. And pretty much like the thing that I do not enjoy about it is I don't enjoy trying to source hot leads. The cool thing with the franchise is basically you and the other investors that own it in your area like pool your marketing money together, and then we pay a third party company to market for us. And they basically send out mail and do online advertising and stuff in TVs and billboards. And then people call the phone number that's just on those cards. And then kind of based on whatever percent you paid into the marketing fund, you'll get that percent of phone calls from leads. So for the most part, we're working with people who've kind of been pre-screened. And then once they call you, like that's your lead, you go out with your own LLC and you go buy the house.
So do you have like a call center that receives these, or do you just do it on your own?
So now I have a buyer who goes out and buys for me in both Tampa and in Denver. But it just rings directly to their phone numbers. We try to keep it directly to the person who's going to meet at your house. Like it's cool. People are way more open if the person who's going to show up on their doorstep is the first person they talk to, as opposed to like some answering service.
We're going to send someone out next Friday. It's like, hey, I'm real. I'm a human. I'm going to come look at your house. Like, for sure. That's cool.
And then we tell them on the phone call, like, we're going to go spend like an hour. Now, if they want to spend 5 hours talking, like I've done it before, we'll stay there for 5 hours. But we will tell them up front, like, hey, we're going to spend an hour. At the end of the hour, we're going to give you an offer. And then no matter what, it's not going to change. And there's some really good advantages to that, as opposed to some of the other investors who are like, oh, I'll get back with you, or like, well, I'm going to get this percentage, and then we're going to do some inspections, and then we're going to come back. And it's been fairly rare that like there has been some huge thing that I missed by not going and doing an inspection before I bought the house. So it tends to work. For me, it tends to work that way.
Because you say you're not doing an inspection, and when you say inspection, you mean you're not hiring a professional inspector to go do it, but you do show up, or you have your buyer show up, and you're there on the grounds, and that's where you kind of make your assessment, just kind of personally.
Yeah, so we basically the longer I've gotten into it, I got much better at what I need to look for. So maybe a little less good at that when I started, but like you walk around. We take a look at the house. We look at the plumbing. We ask questions. We ask them to tell us problems if there's problems, and people don't really hide it. And whatever, like, so we go do just kind of like an assessment, just looking at it, and then put our numbers together and make them an offer. Like by the time I show up to the house, I know what the house should be worth and what I need to make it look like to make it worth that amount of money. And then at that point, it's just a formula of like, I'm going to buy it at 65% or 70% of the after repair value. And I know what that 70% is, and I'm just going to subtract whatever the costs are that I think I'm going to have to put into it to get it there. And then that's going to, then I'm going to offer them that. So, for the most part, it's just there. The only time that I wouldn't do it is if I've actually just started with this. If they have a septic tank or like a well, I'll usually be like, hey, I'm going to have an inspector come out and look at that. If that happens and they say something's wrong with it, I'm going to have to take that out of the price. And I do what I call upfront contract. I do an upfront contract verbally with them where I'm like, is that going to be okay with you? And if they throw a big fit about it, then I'll kind of build like, I don't know, half a septic system into my numbers and try to buy it. If they don't throw a fit about it, then I'm like, cool, it's going to be this much. If not, I'll get a quote. I'll give you the quote. You'll see what it's going to cost me.
Yeah.
But apart from basically those two items, I figure everything else out.
So what are the big ticket items you're looking for when you go do your walkthrough to assess? You said at the beginning you weren't as good at it and you got better. So like, what were some of the things you missed that the listeners can learn from your mistake? And what are like the main things you look for now?
Yeah, good question. One of them would be wiring. Like you can't really see wiring, but there's some houses that I had bought that were like cloth wiring or older than cloth wiring, and those just don't really pass inspection now. And then you got to go rewire the entire house. So just learned a little bit better what to look at, or go look in the panel and look at what the panel looks like actually open it up and look at the panel to see if you can tell. In older houses, like in Florida, there's a lot of like 1900s to 30, 40 houses that are all wood frame. If you're going to open up walls and stuff like that, there tends to be some good termite damage back behind those. So like making sure that I figure that out and then figure out if I'm going to open walls or not open them. Because another thing for me, just for like my own morality, if I find something, I'm not going to cover it up. Like I'm going to spend the money to fix it, because I'm not going to go sell a house to a single mom with 3 kids that isn't going to be able to fix it when she discovers it down the road. Like I would rather make less money and do people right. So so I kind of just take all of that into effect, and then also I'll go look at the plumbing, like open up the sink and look underneath, make sure that the hot water is working, make sure that the sinks are running, and then besides the septic tank and the well, if they have those things, I check them, and I always make sure I look up the age of the roof before I come. So I know at least generally if I'm gonna have to replace it or not, and then really now from standing outside, like looking at a roof, I can figure out if I'm going to replace it.
That's cool. So you've got your lead systems through the like I said, the mailers and the call center, whatever, with We Buy Ugly Houses. That's how you get your leads. And then you go out, you assess it, you decide if you're going to want to, you've already done the market research. You know what a 3-bed, 2-bath in that area that's, fix up is worth. You offer 60, 75%. Let's say you get it under contract, everything's rocking and rolling. How have you dialed in contractors? Because you're doing this remotely in Tampa and Denver, and you're in Lakeland. And so you're not there in person showing up to these. You got your buyers showing up. But how do you manage contractors and make sure that doesn't go south? Because contractors is always the big, scary question mark of flipping or burring. It's like, how do you make sure that that's done right?
Yeah, contractors are probably my least favorite aspect of the whole business, because sometimes I feel like I'm just their bank account. Like they're just coming, like we've agreed about what they're going to get paid, when they're going to get paid, and they're like, "Hey, man, I really got to go buy diapers. Like, can you please send me, whatever amount of money?" And at first, I would do that. I had a lot of people walk away from projects with funds. Now I have like a form that I have them fill out and sign. Like, here's the triggers for when you're going to get paid. Here's how much money you're going to get paid. And if I kind of going back to the upfront contracts, I like upfront contracts a lot. It's like I can reference back to it and be like, hey, like you have to send me pictures of the house every week, and I've got to make sure that these things are done, and then you can get paid. So I live like 40 minutes from Tampa. So from where I live in Central Florida, I buy houses kind of like 2 hours south of me, 2 hours north of me. And then I live right between Tampa and Orlando. So I buy all the way out to St. Pete, like on the coast, on the west coast of Florida.
So those are all ones you can drive to if you need.
So I can drive to them, but I try to not drive to them. But managing contractors is tough. So I use a CRM, Monday.com, basically to manage my business. Like I work my leads from it and track everything in there. And then when we close on stuff, got like tons of checklists for everything that we need to do to close on it successfully. I've got rehab boards in there for all my private investors. I have like build out even like a profile for private investors to go log in and see what interest they've accrued on their projects. And cool. And like if I've got a new deal for people to invest in, it automatically pushes it to them. And so I've got good systems in there that help a lot too. And I've had a lot of people who've asked me for them. So I just kind of finished building out basically systems that other people with Monday.com can take and replicate and adapt with like all my automations and everything in it too, which is kind of nice.
That's super cool.
Yeah, but I like Monday. It's a diverse, and everybody does everything different. So I like Monday because people can go change it, make it what they want it to be pretty easily. Yeah. But I try to manage my projects off of that, and then getting really detailed scope of works. Like if I close on something, I sit down in the house, or I take 300 pictures of it, and then I go write down like everything that I need to do, and I give it to my coordinator, and she puts it into a scope of work, and I go hand that scope of work to contractors, and I ask them to bid off of it, and then to reference back to it. So those kind of things, they go a long way with contractors too. It's beneficial for you to think through the whole project, but then I also feel like it's helpful for a contractor to be like, oh, cool, I trust this guy. They know what they're doing. You know, they've given me something, instead of walking around being like, put flooring there, maybe swap that thing out.
Yeah,
that door swinging the wrong way.
Yeah. That's cool. So with that, I guess I have two questions. One, with the contractors, do you find that, if you go like, hey, you got to do this point by point contract. I need you to do this. You need to send me picture everything. I have all, you get pretty demanding of them. Do you find it hard to find contractors that agree to that? Because I feel like a lot of them are like, dude, F you, I'm going to do the work and you'll pay me whatever it costs at the end of the day. And that's it. I'm not going to send you pictures every week and do every day and have you micromanage my project. It's like kick rocks, how do you sort through those?
When I'm saying contractors for this, I'm really talking about subs. If I'm hiring like a licensed contractor, we'll still agree to like pay schedules up front, and then I'll give them the scope of work. And then for those guys, like I don't have them do that. Like I trust them a little bit better, because I do feel like
the flooring guy
for it. But if it's like, this is the handyman who's going to go put up drywall and give me, and he's going to do this tile, and he's going to, put baseboards in and fix these 7 things. Like those guys tend to be a little bit more,
like they need the structure.
Yeah, they need the structure. The only thing that I continue to run into is it's still hard to get people to take a bunch of pictures and send them to me. But sometimes,
even if they've agreed to, and that was
even if they've agreed to it. But sometimes I'm like, man, for me to pay you, I gotta see these things. So like, if you can go send me those pictures, and then they tend to go take the pictures after that.
Yeah. How much time do you feel like you spend managing the rehab? Because it sounds like you're kind of GCing it yourself.
Yeah,
like
in Colorado,
not in general, but like just on per project. Let's say, one project, how much time do you feel like you spend managing all of these subs and getting that through completion?
It's probably the thing that takes the most time, and the thing that I wish took the least amount of time. Like, I'd rather sit and underwrite deals and build better systems and and like work with my team. But managing contractors tends to be like a much touchier thing than people want it to be. And I would say probably a third of my week is, I'm actually trying to transition out of it and have my coordinator pick up a bit more. But when I was doing it by myself, before I had buyers, before I had a coordinator, it was probably like 50% of my time. So I'm like driving to meet these guys and talking to them on the phone and going on Lowe's and putting everything into the shopping cart, like to get it there, whatever, all that kind of stuff.
Like now, 10-20 hours a week? Like,
yeah, I would say so. And that also kind of fluctuated on projects. Like I was at one point working on 13 rehabs at the same time. And that's when I started bringing on a team, was like around there, because they were all going really slow. And I was like, hey, you know what? I'm not capable of doing 13 rehabs by myself. Because like Lowe's delivers the wrong fridge, and then you spend 3 hours on the phone with them trying to get them to pick it up and bring a new one. I'm like, I can't do that for 13 houses every week.
Yeah, no, for sure. That's crazy. That's a lot of flip speed going on at one time. And you're financing most of this through private money. You just raise private money and give them a return on their investment, and that's how you fund it.
Yeah, so I do like 50-50. So through the franchise, with the lender I prefer the best, which is Kiavi, or it used to be called Lending Home. Now it's called Kiavi. They give us Kiavi.
Okay.
Kiavi. Kiavi, if you own the franchise I own, will lend to you 100% of your purchase price and 100% draws on your rehabs. So like they do tend to be, and they're not like they've got really low points, and like, you know, their rates have ticked up over the last 6 or 8 months a little bit, but they tend to be like pretty affordable, and they lend to me on everything. I just pay them points and closing costs when I go close. And so it makes it so you could definitely stretch a lot more on getting rehabs. So I do like 50% with them, and then 50% with private lenders. Private lenders I like the most, because it's like, hey, I got this deal under contract. Do you want to fund it? And I pretty much just offer them the same terms, or pretty close terms to Kiavi. In the end, I'm like, I'd rather my friends make money than Kiavi. Like, you know, I appreciate them, but if somebody's going to get wealthy, I'd rather my friends get wealthy.
I love that. One, I love that it's like, that puts in perspective. So many times people are afraid of like, oh, I don't want to ask my friends for money. It's like, you're like, I'd rather make my friends money than make the hard money lender money. Like, it's not a, they're not doing me a favor. They are, but like, especially with you, you're like, I can just go get the money over here, though. They're really not doing me a favor, but I'm doing them a favor, you know, and it's a win-win, which is so cool.
It is. The other thing that's a win with private lenders is I defer all my interest payments until I close on the house. So I just pay them all a big lump sum when I close. Oh, cool. With Kiavi, I pay them monthly interest payments. But in the end, like, I don't even try to like work down what I'm paying them, because again, like I would rather make people I know wealthy, you know, or friends of friends, whoever it is. Like, I'd rather make people wealthier than you know, an institution.
And it always just seems easier to work with humans than companies, right? It's like, hey, we went a week over. They're like, it's okay, you know, or whatever, you know, as opposed to hard money. They're like, well, we're taking deed. Like, it's like, oh, chill, bro. Like,
like I've gone too long on some projects, and it's like, you got to go refinance because they put a 12-month term on it. And sometimes like it's easy to refinance with them. Sometimes it's not, you know, so yeah.
So what kind of terms are you getting on these loans? We're talking like 1 or 2 points and like 8, 9, 10, 12% interest. Like what terms are you looking at?
For Kiavi, it's $1,000 fee, a point, and I think right now they're at like 10.7%. Cool. So like all in all, not horrible. With my private lenders, they tend to be more like 9 and 1. And I've started kind of offering some private lenders just being like, hey, we'll just do 12%. Like, just leave it at 12%. It's easier for people who don't do like fix and flips to not really, like, they don't really understand the points, and being like, well, it'll probably come out to this much if I hold it for this amount of time. So I've kind of shifted away from doing points and just been like, hey, it's going to be a 12% interest loan.
And then you're just saying, I'll cash you out everything when it sells. Nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And that's nice, because then you're not having to fork out any money.
Right. Yeah. It's pretty sweet. And with them too, like, I'm going to like get whatever the closing costs are probably with them. So it's like 100% instead of paying out closing costs to the lender. And then obviously easier because I'm just sending them like, hey, here's some comps if they want it. Most of them don't even ask me for it. Here's what I think it's going to sell for. And like, this is what I'm buying it at, and it's this much under market. And that's easier than, you know, going online and filling stuff out. If it's people that you know. If it wasn't somebody I knew, but they wanted to lend to me and they wanted all that stuff, it'd still probably be easier. But
Yeah, that's cool. I really like that. So, oh man, okay. I want to dive into a couple of your crazy stories. So you're buying, you're getting, you got the We Buy Ugly Homes franchise. So you're getting all these crazy leads. You got a couple houses that we call the murder houses. So let's go through the first story. You actually bought a house from a guy that was in prison for murder.
yeah, so one house that I bought was like right when I started doing it. I got really lucky on this deal. It's actually maybe the third or fourth most that I've made on a house, and I assigned it. So I wholesaled it to somebody else and made 75 grand on the wholesale, which is just, it's killer wholesale. So that house, I went out like in August of 2020. So very, very shortly after I had started doing it full time. And I was trying to be conservative because I went and got my real estate license. So I'm a realtor as well, which I pretty much have, so I can sell my own houses and save some money. So I pulled my comps. I was conservative on my comps, and then I went out, and her house was crazy. It was trashed, and I overvalued my estimate for the repairs on her house. So like I undervalued the house, I overvalued my repairs. I offered her like 40 or 45,000 bucks for it. She told me to kick rocks. So I left. And while I was there, she told me that her husband had murdered his mom in the house, and she found his mom at like 3 a.m. and he was gone. And I went and like Googled it and found an article on it.
In the house you're trying to buy.
In the house I'm trying to buy, yeah. So I'm like in there, I'm like, okay. And she's like, yeah, this is where I found his mom. I'm like, okay, cool. And she's got like 20 dogs in the house. Like there's crap all over the floors. The windows are spray painted from like some other person who's living in there. Like it was a nasty, nasty house. But it had a pool. The pool was murky and black. Like it was gross. I've got maybe after this I'll text you some photos of that house. I don't know if you post it somewhere. You can go put this Dropbox link somewhere if you want. So it was like it was a gross house. But she tells me that like she's going to get a divorce from her husband, and she's not going to give him any money. And I'm like, well, in Florida, even though he's not on the deed, like you do still have like he still owns 50. Yeah. He still owns 50% of the house. She was like, I don't know about that. I'm going to call a lawyer. Like, I'm not taking your offer. And I was like, all right, that's fine. So I go home, like, keep following up with her. It's a few months rolls around, and I get a call from her. I get a call from her in December, basically like, all right, come back out here. Like, I'll sign your contract. And I was like, all right. So I drove back out, and I'm like still kind of new to this. So I call a friend of mine. I'm like, hey, I've got to get her husband to sign off on this. But like he's in prison somewhere. I don't know how to do that. And he was like, well, your options are like drive to the prison and try to meet with him, or send him some mail. But like a title agent can go remote close it with him, in prison. But you can't just have them show up. Like he's not going to sign it. You got to go, go get it from him. So I basically spend 5 or 6 months sending snail mail back and forth with this prisoner. He happened to have run out of whatever money he had.
You can't just call the prisons and be like, hey, can I talk to John?
Yeah, I called the prison to try to figure out if I could. And basically he had like a social worker. I don't know what it was called, but like a person, and that person was like, no, you can't come talk to him, but I will. I told her what I was trying to do. And I was like, could you just tell him that? And she was like, okay, I'll tell him that. But like, here's his address. You can send him mail. So she told him that his wife was trying to sell the house, and basically like his wife didn't want to give him any money. I had to convince her to give him 10 grand of the 40 grand, and which she reluctantly did. But I was like, you can do that, and you'll still get 30 grand, or you can't sell it. So she said yes. He said yes after a little bit of time, and then we were trying to work through like we got all the docs signed. After a few months of everything, and then basically like then their kid would not leave the house, and then we actually ended up having to go through an eviction process to kick the kid out of the house so that we could finish it. And I ended up wholesaling it to some friends for like a $75,000 fee, and then they flipped it, made like 50 or 60 grand on it.
Look at that. That's crazy. So you said it was months of this mail correspondence. Like this was
Yeah.
a drawn out process.
Yeah. I want to say I went out there in August, and I think that we closed on it in like June or July of the next
Wow.
year.
So you're having
Yeah.
like notaries show up to the prison. Maybe they have a notary at the prison. How does that work?
Yeah, no, we got a mobile notary to go to the prison and have him sign it. And he actually ended up signing it in, I want to say March maybe. It took us like
Okay.
3 months then to go evict the daughter from it. But I ended up going and opening a P.O. box because I was like, I don't know that I want this murderer to have, my home address. So I like
Yeah.
got a P.O. box, and I was like, oh, so actually his first letters, I put the church's address that I used to work at as like the return address. Because I was like, I don't know, man. If you go to the church, I don't want it to come to my house. I just like went back to the
He
church.
needs to go to church,
Yeah,
That'll be good
yeah.
for him to show
He
up there.
did. He did actually sign on one of the letters and was like, God loves you for doing this for me. I was like,
Nice.
I was like, sure, maybe. I'm glad you're getting 10 grand, man.
Well,
Yeah,
that's the thing. Like, I love how these things can be such win-win-wins. And I talk about this all the time. I'm sure the listeners are like, okay, Joe, we get it. You like real estate. But it's just cool because, like, that was a win for her. She was able to get rid of this, nightmare of a house, and she made some money that
yeah,
she wasn't going to make any other way. And him, he's in prison. He's not, how's he going to make money? Like,
yeah. He's
you helped him make money, and then you made a grip of money, and then you sold it to your friends who they made a grip of money. And guess what? The final buyer had this awesome house. It was probably cheaper than most of the houses in the area, and it was brand newly remodeled, and they were happy to have a new house.
Yeah, like getting down to the human element of it. And I'm like always more concerned about like the human element than anything else. Like
Sure.
I was a pastor, I still volunteer with my church. Like I love people, and I love making sure people are taken care of. Like the house scared me for a lot of reasons, which is why I landed on the value of it. And then basically, like after we closed on it, the market took off, which is why my friends made a bunch of money too, because the house ended up being worth more, as time went on. But like she had no money to be able to fix up herself, and I like walked her through that. I was like, hey, if you have the money, you don't need to sell this to me. Like you can go fix it up, and if you fix it up, I think it's going to be worth this much money. I didn't lie to her about the numbers. I told her what I thought it would take, and she just honestly couldn't do it. But then she was like, I cry I cry in this house because my mother-in-law got murdered in here, and she was a friend of mine, and like I don't want to live here anymore. I want to move to Georgia. And then the guy in prison, yeah, he had no money. I don't know what he's buying in prison. I'm sure you have to buy stuff there, but he didn't have money, and he needed money too. And the daughter was an issue for both of them. And if they were telling me the truth, was using the house to like sell drugs to other people out of with her boyfriend, and like they didn't want her doing that there either. So it took a lot of patience. I think a lot
Yeah,
of
I
people
mean,
would have given up on it.
months. Sure, that's
Yeah,
what I was saying. Like, who else is going to do that? That's a lot of time. They can't
yeah,
just call a real estate agent, be like, "Hey, will you sell our house?" You
yeah.
know.
One of the other murder house stories was like a really really long and drawn out process too. Like it took over a year basically because of all the elements for it. And I've just committed to being like, okay, I'm gonna walk this from the start to the very end. And sometimes you take a lot of time and it doesn't work out, and sometimes you take a lot of time and it does. And it's definitely worth sticking
Mhm.
through the process.
Yeah, well, and it's cool because one other aspect we talked about on the human element is like the neighbors. Like you made that neighborhood better, right? They're not,
Oh
there's
yeah,
no selling drugs out of the house. Like whoever the neighbors are like, thank goodness that
yeah. The
Michael came
neighbor
in and did everything that happened.
the neighbor across the street was always sitting outside on his lawn chair, and I'd chat with him every once in a while. And every time I came by, he's like, "Thank you, man."
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I don't know. I'm a similar way. I look at it like, and there's so many crooks out there in every industry, right? I used to be in the sales industry, and I was like, oh man, there's some scumbags in the sales industry. And then I get into like real estate, I'm like, oh man, there's scumbags and contractors and real estate
Yeah,
agents. And it's like any industry you can think of, there's scumbags in it that are gonna, screw over their own mom. but it's also so cool that, probably in the industry, it's like there's awesome people like yourself just doing it right, who would rather make less money and take care of the termite damage that's unseen and do the right thing. And it's like, it can be done right. You know what I mean? And I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's been times where people agreed to like an offer, and as I talked to them, I realized like this offer doesn't actually get you everything you need, and I've been like, hey, like I'm going to increase my offer by like on more than one occasion by more than $10,000, even though you've already said you do it for less. Because when I'm like sitting here listening to what your needs are and what you need to get done and what you have to go buy, like this is actually not going to do it for you. Like this is what it's going to take for you to get there. And then on the flip side, there's been tons of people who are like, hey, I feel like you actually care about me, and I'm going to sell you this house, and I got an offer of $10,000 or $20,000 more than what you've offered me, but like I trust you, and you cared, and you sat here and talked to me about it, and I do feel like in my personal philosophy, if you care more about buying the house than helping the seller with whatever their situation is, like you don't deserve to buy the house. You should firstly care about helping the seller, and if through that it makes sense for you to buy the house, then that's awesome.
I love that, man. I love that. I think that's something we don't necessarily talk about enough, because it's just the right way to do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I say, the cool thing is a lot of times it does give back and it all works out. And people work with those that they trust. Like you're saying with, it's easier to do private money because they trust you. They're like, oh, it's Michael. He knows what he's doing. Here's the money. You don't have to like show them every document and all the proof. They're like, man, there's this book by Stephen Covey called The Speed of Trust. And it just talks about it, man. When you can trust people, like life is so much better and easier and more enjoyable. Like the process is just like at the end of the day, it's like that was a cool experience,
Yeah, I'll have to find the book. Sounds like a good book.
I love that, man. Well, that's sweet. I know you've got a lot of other stories, things. I know you're really into systems. Let's maybe, we got a few more minutes left before we go into our final four questions, but let's talk a little bit about systems. Like we don't necessarily have to dive into every detail of your system. I'm sure it's intricate, but maybe you could expound upon a little bit of some of the things you have created or what you encourage people to, or where you see, I don't know, blind spots for people. Cause I think that is something that sometimes gets overlooked.
Yeah. For me, like I've always been a very systems minded person. I like taking something and I'm like, if it's something that I know that I'm going to have to do a few times, I'd rather like, even as simple as like, I'd rather have it written out instead of being like, wait, what comes after I do this step? And then what comes after I do that step? Like even just writing it out, like do this, then this, then this, then this, then this makes it so you can like stick it up on on a sheet of paper on your computer or next to you. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. And now that I've done this, like, I know I need to do this because I already wrote that down. And like, I think that makes sense. And then the reason I ended up building these other systems for people, if they wanted them, is I'm really thankful for people who answer my questions, and I'd rather people not have to go restart and make everything yourself and try to figure it out. Like I actually, even when I started, I sat down with a different investor and they were like, hey, here's how we do it. Like, this is what our Dropbox looks like. This is what we do before we show up to a house. This is, here's the forms that we use. Whatever, all their stuff was really helpful to me. And people asked me to make these because a few investor friends of mine were like, I'd love to use it. And I was like, okay, yeah. Like people did that for me. I'll do it for you guys. And to me, it's just more of like, if it's a repeated process and you build a system around it, it's going to make it easier and more efficient. And then it makes it really easy when you finish it to go back and evaluate it and be like, was that all encompassing? Like, did we miss something originally? And then can we add that this time? Like one time I bought a house and the zoning on it was different than single family. And I didn't know that. And the title agent never said anything to me about it. And it lost a lot of value when I bought the house. And now, like, part of my systems are check and see if it says it's legally non-conforming commercial or something like that. And I wouldn't have done that, but because I made the mistake one time, it's there. And then now if some other person uses my system, like, it'll have that on it. And they may never have thought to go check that, but hopefully they won't lose money on a house because of it. So like, I don't know. There's just lots of little things. I don't know that necessarily answered your question, but it's a
No,
start.
I love that, because a lot of times we think about systems, it's like not only is it makes sure things are done right, right? Where it's like makes your life simpler in a lot of ways, makes it easier. But like I said, it also helps mitigate risk, which, I say this time and time again that real estate investing is really just all about risk mitigation. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, it truly is.
all that's really it's risk mitigation from the lender side. They're trying to decide, can we trust Michael? You know what I mean? That's why having friends that trust you, that mitigates the risk. They've seen your track record. The
Yeah.
company, you have the franchise, and so you get this special hard money lender that works with you on special terms because you're safer. You own the franchise. They know you're not just some random.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just love how systems can do that. I think of like the checklist when the plane's going to take off. You see these pilots checking everything, and it takes 45 minutes to get off the runway. And it's like, yeah, you got to make sure you're being safe. Check your title,
Yeah.
check the deed, make sure. I mean, that's the people sometimes, did the people you're even buying it from own the home? Like, check who really owns the home. Didn't you have an experience with that where like some lady was like fraudulently trying to sell houses?
Okay. Yeah. There was a murder. Oh, yes. No, that story. Yeah. Okay. So that, like I don't know how much time we have. I'll tell a quick
We'll
version
do
of
a
it. It's
quick version,
basically,
then we'll bust out.
I got this call from a girl, and she was like, "Hey, I own these houses. Like, can you make an offer on them?" She told me that she didn't have access to them, um, and so I was like, "Okay, let me just research. I'll call you back." She was like, "All right, I'll work on trying to get access for you." So I look online, and I see that she doesn't she's not like the owner on record on either of these houses. So I call her back. I'm like, "Hey, you don't own either of these houses. Can you help me like fill me in on this?" And she was like, call me in a month. She hung up. I was like, that was kind of strange. I put on my, whatever in my lead management thing to call her 1 month later. And before I call her, when it went off a month later, I went and looked, and she did own both of the houses. But I did look at the deeds, and I noticed that she turned in two quitclaim deeds, um, and they were both signed and notarized by the same people, like signed by the same witnesses, notarized by the same people.
Mhm.
Both of the deeds were from a year and a half. Like one was from a year before, and one was from a year and a half before. And I'm like, you're telling me that she owned both these houses? She just had these deeds sitting around in her house and didn't go turn them in like that? That doesn't seem
Like they were
reasonable to
dated a
me.
year earlier.
Like they were dated a year earlier for when they
Okay.
had gotten notarized by the people that had been the owners on records when I looked a month before. So I call her back. I'm like, "Can you tell me about how you got these houses?" And she was like, "Well, these are old clients of mine." And then she ended up telling me that they had both they were both deceased. They both passed away. And I was like, okay. Yeah, so I like follow up with my title agent. She's like, "All right, let me look into this." Like, yeah, I agree with you. It sounds sketchy. But while they were doing that, I was like, okay, I'm going to go look at the houses, like see if I can make her an offer on it. And I go out to that first house. She had told me I could have a locksmith change the locks. So I paid a locksmith to like change the locks on the house. And I went and walked through it. Definitely saw where the guy had died inside the house. Like you could tell. It was trashed. Like it definitely looked like somebody had been squatting there. And then I left that one, drove 15 minutes to this other house. And while I'm on the property at the other house, somebody rolls up in a big SUV and just starts cussing me out. Jumps out of their car, and they're like, "This is my mom's house. My father died. This lady quitclaim deeded it into her name." And I had said like, "Oh, this girl told me to come look at the house," and he knew her name. He was like, "Give me
Wow.
your information. I'm giving it to the sheriff." Then basically, I get a phone call from the sheriff, and he's like, "We can't find her." I'm like, "Well, she's living out of a truck in this city," and he convinced me to basically ask her to go meet to get a check from a title agent at a grocery store, and she went to get the check and then got picked up by the sheriff.
So you're like setting up a sting operation with the
Yeah,
police.
yeah. I
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
man, I just came outside to buy a house. I don't. Yeah, my wife like laughs about that day because she was like, it was a normal day, and then you were just on the phone for like hours and hours and hours, and I was like, what is
Like,
going
what is
on?
going on? That's crazy. So what was she doing? Was she just forging notary document? Like,
So
how did she
she
get
got
those?
yeah,
How did
she
she
got
do that?
she got her brother or brother-in-law or somebody who was a notary to sign it. And then her boyfriend and her ex-boyfriend both were the witnesses on it. And she just got she just fraudulently signed them both.
And then someone just forged the seller's signature.
Forged the seller's name, and then she went and turned them both in to the counties. And then pretty much from there, the sheriff went and picked them up, and then I think they, the old owners or the heirs of the old owners went through like the legal process to go get them put back in the.
So if you had bought these, like normally, if someone was ever faced with this weird of a situation, normally this would have been caught in what, like in title insurance, like the title company would have hopefully detected these were like.
Yeah, so the title company thought it was a bit sketchy. If it had only been one house, like particularly the house that the guy was dead in, like the first house that I went into, she actually probably would have gotten away with it. She got a little bit hungry, and she went for two houses at the same time. The other house, she wouldn't have gotten away with it because somebody had hired a lawyer, and the deed couldn't be transferred. Because she did both of them, it ended up being a red flag for the title agent. But to kind of answer the question, I did go ask the title agent, like, what would have happened if I bought this? And basically she was like, well, title insurance would have reimbursed you for your cost of the house. So like what I actually paid to get the house, that's what the title insurance money would have given me. But if I would have bought it and then improved it, like I would not have been able to recover the improved funds from it. So yeah, title insurance is basically covering you on your purchase price.
Well, and so here's the thing, and we'll end on this, but I actually had an experience where I had to actually cash in on title insurance, which I'd never done before. Like,
no way.
And there is a dollar amount. This is everybody listening, like there's a dollar amount of what title insurance covers. And it might be your purchase price, it might not be. Like no one looks, right? You should look at what is actually covered in the title insurance, because if they don't want to deal with lawsuits or any headaches, they can just cut you a check for whatever the amount was. And that's it. And they can wash their hands of it. Like in my mind, title insurance was like the safety net of all things. Like if anything goes wrong, they will scour the universe and find the original owner and it'll all be okay. Like, no, they're an insurance company. And just so like an insurance company, they can just cut a check and wash their hands and be like, peace out.
Did it not work out for you?
I think it did. Okay. I'm in a little bit of litigation with somebody.
You're still doing it?
Yeah, so somebody thinks they own it, but they don't. And so they filed a lawsuit thinking I would not respond and they could just like file like a default. And then I did respond. And so now no one's scheduling a court date though, because they know they have zero case. And I just want it to fall away. Either I just don't want to show up to Texas and go to some court hearing. So no one's scheduling this court date. It's been months and months and months of this. So it's like, it's basically dead in the water. But the cool thing, and here's the coolest part though, I got my all my money back because the title insurance said we don't want to deal with the lawsuit. They wrote me a check for what I had bought it for. So you could still keep the house if it works out, and you got the check. I still own it. I still own the house. I still. I mean, I'm out like a couple, like $700 in some closing costs because it didn't cover all the closing costs. But, and it was just it was supposed to be an empty lot of land. It wasn't like a big expensive house. So that's why the title company was like, yeah, just pay them back for, it wasn't like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Okay. But I still own the property. I got my money back. I was showing one of my students, I'm like, look at this, my spreadsheet. And I am showing like a $1,400 cash on cash return. He's like, how's that possible? I'm like, well, when you get all your money back from the purchase and then you can still rent it out, it helps. Yeah. So not too shabby. Not too shabby. Title insurance does have a limit though. And yeah, like I say, if they need to, they'll cash out on that. But for flippers, that's a really big deal. Like I said, if you get it for $40,000, but you put $100,000 into it and you don't own it. Yeah. Like you're screwed. So check what your title insurance is actually going to cover, people. All right. We got to get going. I'm going to go through these final 4 questions real quick here. And then we'll let you get back to your wife and kids, Michael. All right. Number 1 question. What is a non-real estate related bucket list item you're excited to check off next?
Check off next. I'd have to think about it.
Or recently checked off.
One that I checked off when I did this. I made a ton of great memories with my family growing up because my parents had 12 kids. And and we had a motorhome, and we went and made memories like driving around, probably because you can't fly 12 people places. So we just like had so much fun, and I wanted to buy a motorhome so I could do that with my kids. And because of the real estate stuff, we bought one a little over a year ago. And last summer we went out for a month, and I worked from the road and just went to like Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Utah, and Colorado, and just hiked
awesome.
for a month. Yeah, it was a ton of fun.
That's quite the bucket list. I love that, man. All right, the question number 2, what book are you currently reading?
Okay. I just finished it like last night, but nice. The Psychology of Money, and it's a really good book. It's a pretty new book, but it's just like a really good perspective on thoughts on money, and it's really easy. Like, oh gosh, I'll
put you on the spot here.
Yeah,
The Psychology of Money.
It is by an author, Morgan Housel, I think.
Okay. I want to look it up. I haven't heard of that one yet, but it sounds interesting.
Yeah, it's a good book. It's a short book too. Like if somebody doesn't like to read, it's a good book. Like put it next to your bedside, read a chapter a night. I think maybe the chapters are like 6 pages.
There you go. I like it. All right. So what content, book, podcast, course, YouTube channel, just whatever would you, besides anything that we're associated with, what would you recommend people check out?
I'm a big fan of Brandon Turner, and he recently launched a something called Better Life, which is basically just having a better life, and he started a Better Life podcast. So there's not tons of podcasts out on it, but I like it because I am like so hungry for real estate stuff. Like I'm always listening to real estate stuff, and he's got a little bit of that on his podcast, but also just like general stuff on like health and marriage and random other stuff to make it so that you have a better life. So I'd probably have to go with that. That's the thing for me at the moment.
I love that. And he does like some retreats and stuff too, right? He's doing programs, like he's doing everything. So
yeah, he's doing some cool stuff through that too. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Last question, then we'll let you go. You get to send a message out to the whole world. What is that message going to say?
To the whole world, I think it would probably just be embrace vulnerability. It just makes better relationships with people, with spouses, with kids. And I feel like I talk to so many people that have had people in their life that hide stuff from them. And if you're just vulnerable with people, like it's crazy how close it draws you to them. So like I'm vulnerable with sellers. I'm vulnerable with people I meet on airplanes. Like I think people feel afraid that they're going to get harmed in vulnerability, but I think it unlocks a lot of great things in life. So my text message to the world would be embrace vulnerability.
Yeah, man. And I can honestly say it's kind of interesting because a lot of people, we do have these like guards up, you know what I mean? And even just having this conversation with you, I feel like you don't have that. There's not this egotistical guard of like, it's like you're just transparent and real. And it's like, it's kind of been refreshing to just chat with you in this past hour. So I actually see firsthand what you're talking about. You got that pastor vibe still going for you, I would trust you.
Yeah, that comes from that. Yeah, that's probably why it's embrace vulnerability.
I love it. I love that. That's really good, man. Well, sweet. Well, we'll let you get going. If people do want to like follow you or reach out to you about maybe getting some of your systems or just, seeing what you're doing or do deals with you, finance some of your projects, how can people keep in touch with you?
Easiest way would be Instagram. On Instagram, I'm Michael Mutz, MichaelMutz.
Awesome.
Michael Mutz. That's the easiest way.
Cool.
But really, they should reach out. They should reach out to Joe Jensen first and ask him how he's unlocked looking great and crushing real estate in the world.
Well, we love it, man. I appreciate the kind words. Well, we'll let you go. Thanks for being on the show. Without any further ado, this is Joe Jensen signing off for the Real Estate Investing School podcast, reminding you to just do the right thing.